Rabbitte. You're very welcome, Minister, to the Seanad. I think it is your first time here, and I want to wish you all the very best in your role. And if ever there was one person fitting, you are the person for it. And I know my other colleague is over there, Senator Noonan, who would happen to agree with me, and we've spoken about it. But you're very welcome here, and this was something I would have also called for, along with a lot of other senators, for actually a conversation, a debate, statements on the Storm Éowyn. And it was great to have the Senior Minister here earlier on, and I welcomed his contribution, particularly where he said that there will be a lot to learn from, and we are fully out of the response stage in respect of it, that the strategic management framework overseen by the Office of the Emergency, the OEP, in the Department of Defence will be reviewed to the Government Task Force and Emergency Planning. That's really, really welcome, because I think there's a lot of key findings that's going to come out of this. One of the key findings in it will be that people did suffer. There's no denying that whatsoever. But our council staff, our frontline emergency staff, really stepped up, and that includes all across Uisce our ESB, and many more. But so did our volunteers, and so did our community response. It was absolutely phenomenal. But down in Galway, where I come from, and Galway's quite big, it's like Cork. We're the second biggest county, I'd like to think, outside of. When we go out the country, we're the second biggest. But we have actually a real dynamic, because I live on the banks of the Shannon in Portumna, where the Shannon goes by. But in the other part of my constituency, I have the Atlantic, believe it or not. And on this particular storm, we were blessed. A, it happened at night. B, it happened at high tide. And actually the wind direction on it. So if you had actually the merry mix of where you could have had that high tide, a slightly different wind direction, Galway City, Kinvara all the way in, they would have got absolutely close to flooding, no doubt about it. And where I sit on the banks of the Shannon, we are always prone to flooding from excessive rain and everything else. So we do need to look at what is our emergency response by our local authorities as coordinated at a local level. Because can you believe it, Minister, and I know you'll find this hard to believe, that in Galway County Council, the firemen, the retained firemen, can't use a chainsaw. And where you have an extreme weather event like what we're just after experiencing, we relied on the volunteers, we relied on the farmers, we relied on people to take the authority into their own hands to go and cut the trees, of which I no doubt they had no qualm in using their chainsaws. But at the same time, there has to be an approach to that. There is a risk element of which farmers were taking their own lives at risk, because they wouldn't be trained to check for all of the wires and everything else. But they did a fantastic job, and they cleared the roads. But the chainsaw licence, because I know from talking to Senator Goldsborough, in Tipperary, they can use the chainsaw. So we need a standardisation of approach. And that is just how the retained firefighters respond to an emergency, how they are called up to respond to an emergency. That needs to actually happen. And particularly where you have a city and county council dynamic, as I do in Galway, that even coordination between the two CEOs, of which two fantastic gentlemen doing a great job, but it's how does the city and county respond to an emergency. That needs to be standardised within it. And one of the stories that I would have, and I'll share with you very quickly, was when there was a 999 call went in for the ambulance services to attend to get somebody from their home because of an emergency. They had to wait 1.5 hours to get actually somebody trained to come to cut the tree to get the ambulance in. That's not good enough. If you're talking to a colleague of mine, Joe Sheridan, down in Dunmore, back in the early 1900s, he would say they had generators. Joe's area was first out with the lights and last on. They didn't come back till the 10th of February. And to be honest with you, they went from actually standing up a community response to actually getting to neighbouring, where they really identified the issues around social isolation, not having a very good informed list of who was where, and also the whole idea about the food response. And we need to look at our day services here. We need to look at how we ensure that our pharmacies, our GPs and our day centres all have that generated response, because if they can't send email and if they can't process the emergency medicines that people would rely on a daily basis, we have to look at that element of within the community. And finally, our forestries right across Galway is decimated, from Portumna to Derryclarg and Woodford, to Quilcha, or to Cool Park and Gort, and down to Munavay in North Galway. Our forestry system has really been flattened.